week 6 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few plays I look to sell and trade this week. The first sell, Brandon Aiyuk of the San Francisco 49ers. So he's a sell-high candidate. First 4 weeks, he didn't do much at all as Brandon Aiyuk. And then he broke out with a monster performance in week 5 in the tough loss versus the Cardinals. 8 catches, 147 yards on 12 targets. So he had his week, but let's think about this. Deebo Samuel hasn't done much the last couple weeks. Aiyuk keeps getting open early and often and making plays. But like I said, Brandon Aiyuk, the first 4 weeks didn't do much. I know he got his big-time money. I'm holding out the contract. And also, we know he didn't have a training camp, and he's still trying to get his legs under him. But still, I believe Brandon Aiyuk's going to be up and down all season long with all those weapons in that 49er offense. Some weeks he'll have some big weeks. We saw it last season, and some weeks it's Deebo week, George Kittle's week, Jordan Mason's week. So like I said, in a dynamic offense, and he struggled the first 4 out of 5 weeks, and coming off a big game, he's a sell-high candidate this week. The next sell is Darnell Mooney of the Atlanta Falcons. I've said this a lot in my videos over the last couple weeks. You could pick a player up off the wire and flip him on a deal. Darnell Mooney's definitely a sell-high candidate after coming off a monster performance, 9 catches, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns on that Thursday night football victory versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's a sell-high candidate. I believe Mooney most likely won't do that once again this season. I know him and Kirk Cousins have a great rapport. They're on the same page. They're making plays, no doubt about it, for this Atlanta Falcon team. But like I said, we haven't seen much out of Mooney over the last couple of years, even though I think he's found a home in Atlanta and he's playing well. But coming off a ball game like that, he's definitely a pickup and sell high and see what you could get for him. If you could put him on the trade block and see if anyone will bite, this would be the time to do it. The next sell high is DeAndre Swift of the Chicago Bears. First 3 weeks non-existent, and now the last 2 weeks he's gone out there and put up some monster games. Week 4 versus the Rams, 16 carries, 93 yards, a touchdown, 7 catches, 72 yards. And then week 5 versus the Panthers, a big ball game, 21 carries, 73 yards, a touchdown, 2 catches, 47 yards. So this Bear offense, they're starting to click a little bit and get things going over the last couple weeks. I know it's been 2 easy matchups versus a banged-up Ram defense, and then the Panthers, who can't stop anyone. And now another great matchup coming up in week 6 versus the Jaguars, and then a bye week. So like I said, Swift, the first 3 weeks, one of the worst running backs in the league. He couldn't even average 2.5 yards per carry. And now the last 2 weeks in great matchups, he's gone out there and got the job done. But I think Swift, he's not going to be hitting these numbers week in and week out. And this week I would sell him high. The next sell high is from Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. So coming into the week, he wasn't even going to be the starter, even though we out-touched Antonio Gibson pretty healthy in that ball game with Stevenson versus the Dolphins. 12 carries, 89 yards, a touchdown, 4 catches, 3 yards in that ball game for Stevenson. So Stevenson, if the game script's positive, like we've seen for the most part this season, he's going to put up numbers. And then when it's not and they're playing catch-up, is this Patriot team by a touchdown or more, he hasn't put up fantasy points. So week 6, it's going to be a ball game where I believe they're not going to have much running going, where they're going to have to play catch-up and from behind versus the Houston Texans. And Ramondre Stevenson, when the game is that type of script, he's not going to put up fantasy numbers. So coming off where he got benched going into the week, even though he bounced back with 19.20 fantasy points in PPR leagues, he's a sell-high candidate. Because like I said, if this team's trailing, he's not going to do much. And also, they don't trust him 100%, as well as Gerard Mayo, since he's had fumble issues the last couple weeks before this week, and he was benched to start the game. The next sell, Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. At this point, you might have to just sell Etienne for anything, because Tank Bigsby looks like the real deal in the backfield. The last 2 weeks, not on a lot of touches. He's had 90 yards, is Bigsby, and then last week, 101 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Etienne, like I said, he got out-snapped. And I've said this in other videos over the weeks, if you listen to the channel. I think Bigsby's the more physical back and fits in between the tackles the first 2 downs, where Etienne's a change of pace back and a third down passing downs back. So Etienne, his numbers haven't been horrible, but where he went in fantasy drafts in that early second, third round range, he obviously hasn't paid off where fantasy holders got him in that position. And right now, with Bigsby taking over, I believe you dangle Etienne on the trade block and see if you could get anything of decency for him this week. The next sell, Isaiah Likely of the Baltimore Ravens. Likely 2 fluky touchdowns, only on 3 catches, 13 yards in that victory in a up and down ball game in a shootout versus division rival, the Cincinnati Bengals. Isaiah Likely, week 1, no doubt about it. He went out there, had the monster performance at the Kansas City Chiefs, 9 catches, 111 yards, a touchdown. And then his toe was out of bounds to win the ball game in the back of the end zone. And then the last 3 weeks, from week 2 to week 4, he didn't do much until the week 5 game. Like I said, 3 catches, 13 yards, 2 touchdowns. Off that game alone, where the targets really weren't there, even though he found the end zone twice, Isaiah Likely at least showed something, and I believe you could sell him off because this passing game isn't consistent. It's all about running the football, and Derrick Henry for the most part. Even Mark Andrews hasn't done much at all this season, but Likely off the 2 touchdowns on a fluky 3 targets. He's a sell-high player this week, and the final player I look to sell in trades, Caleb Williams of the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams, it's been a mixed bag of results so far in his rookie season, but his best game to date in terms of fantasy football was week 5 versus the Panthers. 304 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 34 rush yards, and he didn't turn the football over. In week 6, a good matchup versus Jacksonville. Then he goes on bye in week 7, and then the matchups are still decent. Washington and Arizona after that. But I believe Caleb Williams, his numbers are going to be erratic all over this season. And like I said, he's been struggling for the most part the first 5 weeks of the season. But now after he went out there and he had a 300-yard performance, 2 touchdowns with no turnovers, he's a sell-high candidate this week, is Caleb Williams. Like I said, good matchup coming up versus Jacksonville. And then he's on a bye week. And like I said, quarterback's a weird position. And week in and week out, it's just totally different what these quarterbacks can put up. Some weeks, some quarterbacks put up 30 points. And then the next week, they put up 5-10 fantasy points. If you could sell a quarterback off and get a wide receiver or a back in a trade, this would be the time to do it. Like I said, with Caleb Williams, who's struggled for the most part in the first 4 out of 5 weeks. So that's a few players I look to sell and trade for week 6 of the fantasy football season.